The G20 summit is around the corner. Here in New Delhi, leaders from around the world will converge soon to discuss and deliberate. In a world marked by the ebb and flow of power dynamics, especially as we enter an era of the new Cold War, as experts have said, one between China and the US, the G20 summit assumes special significance. All eyes are on India as the curtain rises. India, an emerging powerhouse, holds the cards in the high-stakes battle. India is not just a country, it's a force to be reckoned with. A fact acknowledged by the world's most powerful country, the US. India holds the key in this delicate dance of power. The US is stepping up efforts to woo India. Washington recognizes that India is vital when it comes to efforts to contain China's aggression. After all, both Washington and New Delhi want the same thing, a strong counterbalance to China. US President Joe Biden has grand plans to cement the US position in the Indo-Pacific, and India could play a determining part in their success. And that's why Joe Biden calls India the most important country in the world.
And he told me when he asked me to come serve here, he said, "This is the most important country in the world to me. But now that we're working together in space, not even the sky is the limit. From the seabed to the heavens, the US and India are a force for good and a powerful force to move this world forward."
That was the US Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, sharing America's sentiment towards India. The remarks coming ahead of Joe Biden's visit to India for the G20 summit in New Delhi. It also comes at a time when a China-dominated forum of major emerging economies, BRICS, is holding its own summit in South Africa, like we just told you. Leaders from BRICS nations, in fact, are deliberating ways to counter the dominance of the West-led framework in global trade. And they're also discussing expanding that bloc. And China, for that matter, is trying to use this very grouping to bolster its image as a leader of the global South. India can see through that. So can Washington. The US wants to counter China's weight in global development. Washington wants to give the developing nations an alternative to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. It wants to basically prove a better support and financing option for developing countries in the global South. And most importantly, it wants to challenge China's blot to displace the US from the global leader status. So here's what's on the agenda. Discussions between Joe Biden and his G20 counterparts are expected to cover various global issues: the transition to clean energy, combating climate change, the economic and social impact of the Ukraine war. US President Joe Biden also plans to advocate for reforms to the IMF and the World Bank during the G20 summit. And during his time in New Delhi, President Biden will also express his appreciation for Prime Minister Modi's leadership within the G20. The US basically will also reaffirm its commitment to the G20 as the primary platform for international economic cooperation. And America will further extend its involvement by hosting the G20 summit in the year 2026. And the G20 provides the US the perfect platform to directly engage with the world's emerging economies. The US president will reportedly focus his energy on having the US and like-minded countries, quote-unquote, bring more support for the rest of the world, particularly to the global South. But let's not forget here, on the surface, the US is trying to stabilize its relations with Beijing, seeing as ties are at the lowest point due to a number of issues. But the efforts to rekindle the relationship have also been marred by a series of tense exchanges. Earlier this month, Biden called China a ticking time bomb because of its economic challenges. He said that the country was in trouble because of weak growth. They have got some problems. That is what Joe Biden said. And before that, in the month of June, Biden called the Chinese President Xi Jinping a dictator. China, of course, took offense, calling the remarks a provocation. Biden says he does not want to hurt China, but then this month itself, Biden signed an executive order banning US investment in Chinese technology sectors. The Biden administration has also made efforts to break the dependence on Chinese supply chains. So there you have it. The upcoming summit in New Delhi takes place in the backdrop of this complex and growing rivalry between the US and China. It is a stage for India to flex its diplomatic muscles. India has strategically worked not to be confined to any one side. And as the summit gets closer, one thing is clear. The global south can count on India, at least, to be its champion, especially in an era of great power competition. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the updates on the move.